Hi, I'm Natan Sharansky. I'm grandfather of 8, and I'm a chess player. All the rest is commentary.
And the second part, can you say, and this is 18 questions, 40 Israeli thinkers?
No, that's you will say. Why I should say?
Because it's a little
No, no, no. I'm not going to promote anything. You want to? Uh, I said about myself what I wanted. Now you can speak about the program. Yeah, okay.
So we'll begin where we always do. As an Israeli and as a Jew, how are you feeling at this moment in Israeli history?
Well, it's no doubt it's a historical moment uh, because when we thought that all our major struggles for our right to exist are behind us, and my daughters were complaining that we didn't leave them any essential battle for the future of Jewish people. We had tragedy, which was also a big failure of us as the state, and then we discovered how strong are our people, how idealistic and patriotic is our new generation. And I think that we uh, reestablished our strategic thinking and our strategic positions as a state. The second big thing which happened is uh, exponential rise of the anti-Semitism all over the world. If I spent many years of my life trying to demonstrate the deep connection between some forms of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, you then you don't need all these formulas, 3Ds and others. It's so obvious that it goes hand in hand, the hatred towards Israel and the hatred to our people. And that's historical moment when these two struggles will have to be united in one about the future of Jewish people.
So you mentioned that for so many years you've been very involved with trying to point out the connection between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. What is that like for you right now, seeing that you spent so many years devoted to trying to address this, and now it's all bubbled at the fore
I, I
in
think
America and in
I
Israel and
think now it
beyond?
simply became much more obvious. I'll tell you one example. 20 years ago, I wrote an article in Mariv called Traveling to Occupied Territory, where occupied territory were American universities. So then I used it as a metaphor after my traveling all over America and for the first time seeing this phenomena that American Jewish students are afraid to express, some of them, are afraid to express publicly solidarity with Israel because it can damage their career. And I found that phenomena, then rather modest phenomena, very alarming that American universities becoming almost like Soviet universities, place where Jews will be afraid to express their solidarity with Israel. 20 years later, it's not metaphoric. There was occupation of the campuses. And I would say that the things which were almost secret, which you had really to discover analyzing situation, became open. So in a way, it's even better because, for example, there was a lot of illusions among liberal Jews, and practically every Jew considers himself or herself liberal. I also consider myself liberal. But there was a lot of illusions among liberal Jews that their first and the biggest ally is progressives. Everybody who is progressive is for tikkun olam, which means it is Jewish in soul, if not in nature. And I spent years trying to explain that progressives are not liberals, that that in fact are neo-communists, that they want simply to replace our world of human rights with the world of ideological dogmas. And it was very difficult for many liberal Jews to accept it. Suddenly it became obvious. And so on one hand, it's awful, this atmosphere of hatred in the academia, when even the biggest tragedies, biggest pogroms which are happening to us, are welcomed as beginning of the anti-colonial struggle. So it's really painful. On the other hand, it's good that people will live in no illusions who are our real allies and who are not.
What do you think has been Israel's greatest success and greatest mistake in the current war against Hamas?
Well, the mistake, of course, there are technical mistakes, meaning that mistakes of our intelligence, definitely failure of our army to come in time. But if you look not on the responsibility of one or another officer, but a big picture, I believe that all the concept of fighting dictators among Arab in the Arab world who will be serving our interests and who will be fighting our enemies was wrong from the beginning. And it started with the Oslo Agreement. I wrote my first article against Oslo 2 weeks after it was signed. And I was against it not because I didn't believe in the Palestinian autonomy. In fact, then I was speaking, and it was not popular that Palestinians should run their life on their own. I believed in it. But when I understood that the hope, that in fact what we are doing, we are bringing dictator from Tunis to Palestine. We are telling to Palestinians, whether you want or not, he will be your leader. And we hope that he will be a strong dictator to control his people and to fight against our enemies.
Who are you referring to?
Yasser Arafat.
Uh-huh.
We brought Yasser Arafat knowing and hoping that he'll be a strong dictator, that he'll be our dictator, because we will give him enough money and enough weapons, he'll be our dictator. And as a result, and it was clearly said by our leaders in those days, that he will defeat Hamas much easier than we, because, and I quote, he has no Supreme Court, no human rights organizations, and no independent press. בלי בג"ץ בצלם יפי נפש מעיתונות. And then I was really very concerned that suddenly we, as the only democracy in the Middle East, hope that it will be dictators around us who will do work for us to defend Israel. And in the article which I wrote a few weeks after signing the agreement, I said, we want him to be dictator to fight against our enemies, but as a dictator, he will need us as enemies. Dictator cannot survive without mobilizing his own people for the struggle against enemy. And there is no other natural enemy for Yasser Arafat than Israel. So it's that the next generation of Palestinians will be brought up in more hatred towards us than the previous one. And that's more or less what happened. And by the way, then I had a discussion with Yossi Beilin, who was then deputy foreign minister, deputy of Shimon Peres. And he told me, look, Natan, your ideas about developing civil society, that we cannot really have peace with Palestinians if there is no developed civil society, they are good, but it means that we'll wait for the peace for another 30 years. And we are doing peace in the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, there will be a new Middle East, Middle East of cooperation, of peace. And 30 years passed after this. And we are in much worse situation, much more far than then. And people now, again, are thinking about solutions. Who are those dictators who will help us? So all this concept, which went through Oslo, and then disengagement, when I resigned from the government of Ariel Sharon, with whom we were in very good relations, because I thought it's madness what we are doing. We are like creating ourselves the biggest region for the terrorism in the Middle East. But again, the philosophy was behind it, and I had conversations with Ariel Sharon until the day of my resignation. He was trying to convince me that now We are giving them the area where they can do whatever they want, but they know that the moment they have one shot in our direction, we can destroy their everything, and the world will give us full support because we gave it to them. And for the next 10 years, the free world will be with us in our if they will start anything military. And I told frankly that I don't think he has 10 years, maybe he has 10 days, that the world will love us, but in the end it's all against us. So it goes from Oslo, then it goes to disengagement. And then the concept of the last 10 years that if we will give, if we will be strong enough against Hamas to give him a blow each time when they attack, and at the same time we'll give them a carrot, like $50 million that Qatar was distributing there. Hamas will be neutralized. So we don't have already illusions that Arafat will destroy them. We don't have illusions that Hamas will be peaceful, but as disengagement. But we do have illusions that Hamas between stick and carrot will prefer to be neutralized.
Meaning the constant mistake you're identifying is that Israel is misassessing the enemies and having some sort of illusion about what will happen.
Yeah, that or we hoped that in fact, we did hope that the dictatorial nature of Arab regimes around us will be in our favor, because we cannot make them democracy. So at least they will be our dictators. Or it will be dictators who are afraid of us, and that's why control their people and will not let them fight against us. And that was all illusion. I personally believe that the only way that there will be any stability, or it will be stability based only on the strength of our army, or it will be stability based both on the strength of our army and some development of civil society, the Arab society around us. And we didn't believe in it. We tried to find a way how those dictators will be cooperating with us. And that strategic mistake which we are doing for the last 30 years. And unfortunately, we paid very heavy price for this. Having said this, I have to say that the way we remained, as a Jewish democracy, we remained very powerful state and very idealistic state. And as we didn't know how idealistic and strong is our new generation. And we had many doubts about it. We had all this TikTok generation who are not interested in anything but to look on the screens. And when they need some inspiration, they go to Thailand. And we found out not only that they volunteered immediately, but how noble they are. How read the letters which those who wrote before it, how they feel the importance of the historical mission of Jewish people and of the state of Israel. So we found out that this Jewish state, which was created during these years, is really is getting all the best which we had in Jewish people for the last 30,000 years, and that's the real guarantee of the future of Jewish people for the future.
How do you think Hamas views the outcome and aftermath of October 7th? Was it a success in their eyes?
Well, yeah, in terms of terrorist organization, it was extremely successful operation. For terrorist organization to plan something of such a size for years and then to implement it is historical success. The thing that did they expect that as a result we will destroy them? No, I think they hoped that and there were many signs that will happen in the last years, that first of all, Israel will not be ready to have such big sacrifices but in order to destroy them, and that the world will not be ready to accept that we will simply go to Gaza and eliminate or almost eliminate Hamas. So strategically, their leaders didn't expect it. But terrorist organization usually doesn't think strategically. Think from one terrorist operation to the other, like Munich operation, assassination of the sportsman.
It's very isolated what they're doing.
It was usually isolated. In this isolated tactical world of terrorist organizations, it was a huge success. They had a huge success, and that's why I think we had no choice but to destroy them fully. Otherwise, in this world of terrorist organizations around us, we will not be able to survive.
I want to turn to a different part of Israel more generally. What do you look for in deciding which Knesset party to vote for? I'm not asking which Knesset party you vote for, and I know it's an interesting question because you've been in the Knesset, but when you're thinking about who's going to deserve or earn your vote, what are the things that you're considering?
Well, look, the elections, there is Israel before the 7th of October and after the 2nd of October. It's irrelevant now to go to the debates. I was in 4 governments. I resigned twice. I resigned from Barak's government when he tried to divide Jerusalem, and I resigned from Sharon's government because of disengagement. So it's clear on what political side I am. On the other hand, I was unfortunately very lonely in Knesset in general, speaking about the importance of connection between political process and democratic process, and I believe we can do much more in having, in connecting the real belief in human rights, not into our strategic policy. And here, there is no party which believes in it. So I was, so it's difficult to say where could be my choice. But all this is irrelevant after the 7th of October. Now the main thing is to what extent the unity is the value for the politician, political party. It seemed to me it was clear just after the 7th of October that all this year of polarization and struggle, when one half of the country was accusing the other that they are stealing our Jewish state, and the other part was accusing them that they are stealing our democratic state. And all this was nonsense. Well, then I was writing that, accusing the other side that its dictatorship is wrong. We are not dictatorship, and will not be dictatorship in any way. But the war showed that as a result of this passionate polarization, we are simply missing the real historical meaning of our state and its role. And I hoped, at least in the first half a year, that now it's all in the past. Now the feeling that what unites us, our historical need to protect the only Jewish and democratic state, it seems that it unites all of us. Now we see how the old debates are coming back. Just now there was proposed some compromise, and from my point of view, at this moment, any compromise is good. And immediately there are voices on the extremes, not so much extremes on the left and on the right. Why we will not accept it, because it betrays the ideas of our struggle before. And I would definitely vote for politicians who understand the importance of the unity at this moment. I think in the next couple of years, we should not deal with laws which are dividing, or laws that we have to deal, like Gius, the serving the army.
Conversion,
Not conversion.
Oh, not conversion.
Not conversion. Serving in the army.
Yes.
No, conversion, inevitably it has to be given some time. I was pushing very much for many things to happen in more more tolerant attitude to different streams of Judaism. And I believe it's very important. But at least we can wait for political steps, because the situation itself helps us to be much more tolerant. But the law which has to be passed is who is serving the army, or who doesn't have to serve the army. And of course, it's very painful. But that is a moment for all the sides to make bigger concessions than they were ready before.
Does that scare you?
Well, look, I'm an optimistic person, and there are many things which we have to be shocked by them. And of course, what happened on the 7th of October and the short-sightedness of some of those politicians who are coming back to the old wars as if we didn't have this tragedy. It doesn't scare me. It simply shows me that our challenges are bigger than we thought. But that's okay, As my daughters at least don't complain that we didn't leave to the new generation any serious wars or any serious challenges. At least they don't complain about it.
Which is more important for Israel, Judaism or democracy? Just to get into that little debate that you were, not little debate, but the debate that you referenced.
Well, I always insist, and sometimes I'm in the minority of one, that they are both equally important, and we should not permit ourselves to give up on part of one for the sake of the other. And when I ask whether you're to the left or to the right, I say that the definitions which we use here, what is left and what is right, are very confusing. And I can easily prove that I'm extreme right, or I can prove that I'm extreme left, because of these very unclear definitions. If you are against Oslo Agreement, you're on the right. If you are against removing from the national law about the equality of all the citizens, you're left. And so, from my point of view, those who believe that we should give up on the democratic state for the sake of Jewish character, those who believe that democracy is good if, in addition to democratic Jewish state, and if it creates problems for Jewish state, it has to be removed. They are extreme right. Those who believe that Jewish character, it's like a museum. It's nice to have it. It's interesting to look at it, but we need to live in the democracy, in the freedom. They are on the extreme left, and because I do believe that they're both equally important, so I think I'm exactly in the middle of our political life.
You're between both sides.
Yeah.
Should Israel treat its Jewish and non-Jewish citizens the same?
Well, as equal in front of the law, of course, all the citizens should be equal. On the other hand, be a Jewish state, what it means? I had the right to, not only I and everybody, every Jew in the world has the right to come and to get citizenship immediately. No prime minister, no president cannot stop them from doing it, because that, by definition of the state, it belongs to all the Jews of the world, not only to Sabras, not only to those whose fathers came and built here kibbutz or yeshuv, but to every Jew in the world, even for those who are not thinking to come to Israel. That's very unique situation. That's what makes this Jewish. In addition to this, the state has to make sure that Hebrew will be alive, that Jewish culture will be connected between ancient and the future. There are many that we will fight against antisemitism. We will express solidarity with Jews who don't even think for a moment to come to Israel, but who are suffering antisemitism.
Prioritizing Jewish issues.
That's what makes us a Jewish. But nobody said that all the people of the world should be equal in Israel law. Exactly as nobody said that every citizen in the world should have the same right to be American citizen as the child who was born from American citizens. Equality has to be for those who are citizens. Mm-hmm. So yes, there should be full equality on one hand, and at the same time, Israel as a Jewish state has very special obligations towards Jews of the world and towards the Jews who are coming here.
You mentioned earlier, and obviously anyone who knows anything about you would know that human rights is so much a part of not just your personal story, but in terms of the life that you devoted to advocating for human rights, both for Jews and in the world more broadly. How do you see that taking form in Israel? Meaning, obviously, every country is going to be dealing with human rights issues in one form or another. How do you understand those human rights issues, or human rights issues more generally, in the context of Israel and the Jewish state?
It happened so that Jews, from the very beginning of this world, let's say, from the history of this world, were in the center of the world of human rights. All the beginning of human rights starts from that we are all created in the image of God. And that goes straight to the beginning of Judaism. But Tzelem Elokim, in the image of God, created people. It what means that they are equally precious to God or whatever you believe in. And that's the basis of equality, and as a result, that's the basis of human rights, which specifically were formulated much later. And Jews are automatically, well, because of, you can say, their own interest of survival as the others among the other people, we are interested in the equality that the human rights will protect their rights as a minority. And also their messianic, if you want, vision of Tikkun Olam by the world, human rights are there. Also, in our experience, we became, at the same time, that's the uniqueness of Jewish people, we were created as, we became a people, and we became free at the same time. The first time we are called people, by Paro. So when we go out of Egypt, we go out as people, as We came there as a family, as a tribe. We came out, and that's when we are getting our freedom. So our freedom and our obligations as one people go one after another on Pesach and Shavuot. So historically it's connected. And the challenge which we had and for 1,000 years is how to keep ourselves as Jews, in spite of assimilation, in spite of pogroms, in spite of hatred, how to insist that, yes, we are unique, we are Jews, and at the same time, how to live in the world of human rights or the freedom. And in fact, whether we wanted or not, whether we understood or not, in Israel, from the very beginning, it seems, we were such socialists and communists, and we were such ardent Zionists. We created Israel as the only democracy in this part of the world. And so the challenge to be Jewish state and to be the island of democracy, it came from the same time. Israel is often criticized by some other parts of the free world. They never tried even to defend democracy in such difficult situation as we are. And when some French diplomat was telling me, if you only were not insisting on being Jewish state, but be like us, the state of all the citizens, the world should have no problem. It's simply such a deep misunderstanding. The same as some dictators think that if only they'll stop playing with democracy, okay, they'll be much more accepted. As I say very often to young pupils, young students, and I travel a lot and deal a lot with the students, because 20 years ago I said to Arik Sharon that is the most important beachhead, the battlefield for the future of Jewish people, American universities. So when I talk to them, I say, Tikkun Olam, that's your ideal. I say, yes, of course. If you don't dream about Tikkun Olam, then probably you're not Jewish. Well, it's clear. But I said, Tikkun Olam means a lot of strength. You can't simply say, okay, I want the world better. If you really want the world better, you need a lot of energy, a lot of strength. There is no other source of this strength but your identity. And that's what I realized first in the Soviet Union, because it happened so that I became the Zionist activist, at the same time became free person, and then I became also human rights activist. And so many people were saying to me, you have to choose. You cannot continue with them and with us at the same time. And I always felt it's wrong. If I had strength to fight for my rights, the rights of other people, for going to Israel and so on, and if I had the strength to help to many other groups in the Soviet Union, it's only because I discovered my identity. When I was loyal Soviet citizen, when I had no identity, I always thought how to obey, how not to be noticed, that I have some different thoughts, that I had to be loyal Soviet citizen to the end. Only when you discover that you have history, that you have people, that you have country, and they are all behind you, then you're strong enough to fight for the freedom. And that's a connection which Israelis, whether they understand or not understand, but they're demonstrating it practically every day. We are part of the free world, which gave up on identity, at least until recently. Now they're coming back, but gave up on its identity. And we are insisting that we are part of the free world, but we are a Jewish state. Mm-hmm. And we are the Middle Eastern country, whether we want or not, but geographically we are in the Middle East, which gave up on the freedom, which all the fights, today's Syrian dictator fell. And he fell, it's not that democratic forces are replacing it, it's another dictatorship. And we see that we are part of the Middle East, but we will be different. We are a country of the human rights. So it's very difficult challenge. It's often not appreciated. Mm-hmm. But that's, I believe, our Tikkun Olam.
What role should the Israeli government have in religious matters?
Well, I believe that it should, as I said, we are a Jewish state, so we have to support or to fight for the very first of all, to make sure that every Jew has that Israel belongs to all the Jews in the world, and second, to do everything that Jewish heritage will stay. But in the questions which differ different parts of the communities of Jews in the world, we should play as little role as possible. As I say, we are welcoming Jews from all over the world. We say, make Aliyah. We cannot welcome them, but not their communities, not their rabbis, not their families. We, as a state, should create opportunities for all types of Jews. And we cannot, again, Chief Rabbinate has the privilege to say, from their point of view, who are Jews and who are not. The state, in fact, doesn't have this privilege if there is, and in fact it tries not to, if there is Jewish community, or established Jewish community, but they prefer different type of prayer, even if it is not Orthodox prayer. We don't have to say, yes, that is a prayer, but we have to accept that is a community which has the right to live here, and so we have to give them all the necessary conditions. And as I said many times to my ultra-Orthodox partners in the government, you don't have to call them rabbis. You can call them community organizers. You don't have to call the synagogues. You can say that it's cultural centers, because you think it differently. But you have not the right to to deny the obligation of the state to do everything that this community will feel itself as comfortable in Israel as they feel comfortable in America.
Like going to that point of unity that you mentioned before, that it's really important to bring a sort of cohesion and bonding between all the different types of Jews and backgrounds that people bring.
So what is the question?
No. I was acknowledging.
That's your.
That was my comment.
That's okay.
Now that Israel already exists, what's the purpose of Zionism?
Well, the purpose of Zionism is to make sure that Israel is connected to all the Jews of the world, and Jews feel themselves connected to Israel, and to guarantee the survival of Jewish people. We see today again very clearly that how the forces of anti-Semitism and the forces of assimilation are really competing with one another. Which of these forces will damage Jewish people more? And I think that in both cases, Israel is the best answer to all those efforts to undermine the future of our people.
Is opposing Zionism inherently anti-Semitic?
No, opposing. Everybody has the right to have his or her ideology, and a person can decide that he wants to be assimilated, or he can, or she can decide, because it was some Reformed rabbi, she told me a few years ago that the time has come to build our identity without Israel, because for 1,000 years Jewish identity was not connected to Israel, and now we have to be responsible for all those crimes which Israel does. So I think for my community it's impossible to survive Jewishly if they'll be connected to Israel. So to say that she is anti-Semite, I can say that she is anti-Semite, but that she undermines the chances of Jewish people to survive, for sure, because as we saw, the more and more central part of Jewish identity today is connection with Israel. So people who don't believe theoretically in Zionism, they cannot be called anti-Semites. But people who are actively working to weaken connection of Israel, of Jewish people with Israel, in fact, they are working actively to make Jewish people to disappear, or disappear but possible. So I think that active, aggressive anti-Zionism is turning into anti-Semitism. That's why I came with this formula of 3Ds 20 years ago, and today is as actual as never before. In fact, many people after the 7th of October said that now they agree with my views about anti-Zionism, because now they discovered that this progressive left is not only anti-Zionist, it's deeply anti-Semitic, and they hope that it will be our partners in the struggle for a better world. So that's...
Can I ask, what did you respond to that rabbi who told you that she wasn't able to connect, or she was trying to build a community?
Well, I told that it doesn't exist simply. And today, look, she's trying to do it not because her community is so deeply Jewish. To the contrary, because her community is assimilating, and she feels that the behavior of Israel accelerates this process of people running away from their Judaism. So she wants to disconnect it from Israel in order to save them as Jews. And I thought it's simply like turning the world around, that they become more and more assimilated because they are more and more want to succeed in their society and disconnect themselves from anything what slows down this assimilation. And because now Israel became the factor which slows down their assimilation, so she wants to disconnect it. So I said that in the modern world, there is no way for, or to the a little bit different, as I was saying. From my studies all over Jewish communities all over the world, there is a lot of assimilation. There are only two factors which are slowing it down, is faith and Zionism. So if you are deeply religious person, I don't say now what kind of religiosity, but if you feel yourself very deeply connected to the history, to the culture, to the religious, it's okay. If you're deeply Zionist connected, it's also okay. If you have both, it's great. If you are one of it, there is work to do. But if you don't have both, if you don't have faith and don't have Zionism, your grandchildren will not be Jewish. That's true about Russia, that's true about Argentina, about America, and so on. So here, if you have a community which is less and less connected by faith, and which decides to disconnect itself from Israel in order to save whatever Jewishness you still have, that's a guarantee that grandchildren of your community will not be Jewish. So that's as simple as this. You should be interested. If you want to save your community, you should be interested to make it more and more believing, connecting to your tradition, and more connected to Israel.
Is the IDF the world's most moral army?
Well, I don't know what means most moral. So as we are saying that we are a most clever and most bright nation, I don't know, but I think that IDF and Israel as a whole are facing the challenge which no other democracy in the world has. How to be the moral power at the time of permanent wars against those who want to destroy it. Not that they, let's say, if it was struggle to have a little bit more territory, less territory, that the border of others should be here or there. It's one thing. But if you face the enemy who try to destroy you, and you have to act very quickly against this enemy, and this enemy has no value of human rights with their own children, and for them anybody is simply a human shield, it's unbelievably difficult for such an army to fight and to keep moral code of its behavior very high. And that's what Israel army is trying to do. Are we doing it enough? I don't know. But is there any other army in the world which makes such an effort as our army? I don't know.
If you were making the case for Israel, where would you begin?
It starts from the fact that every people in the world have the right to live their home, and there is no more ancient home for any nation than Palestine for Jewish people. And that's why, so we have to start from our basic right to be here as a Jewish state. Mm-hmm. From there, you start developing all the other layers, and of course, it's more complicated. What it means politically, what it means culturally, what it means religiously, and so on.
Can questioning the actions of Israel's government and army, even in the context of this war, can that be considered a valid form of love and patriotism?
Question? Yeah, I think we have to question. No doubt, each time we have to question. Look, sometimes the actions are happening too quickly, and but then we have to make analysis of this. After this, in fact, when we are not questioning, then some big tragedies like the 7th of October is happening when we are so much deep in one conception. That, so to have a concept that whatever we are doing is moral and right also is a wrong concept. We have to, nobody face such difficult conditions, but how we really face them and whether it was justified that we used this type of weapon or in this dense area, that's something, and I wasn't the government, I wasn't the security cabinet. I have to say, we are asking ourselves all the time. Sometimes the world doesn't see, or sometimes we are so much in the rage of the moment that we ignore it, but I think we are dealing with this question more than any other army in the world.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the most legitimate criticism leveled against Israel today?
That we failed to see the real developments in the area, and by this we, of course, endangered ourselves greatly. But it was also a disservice, I think, for the world for the world it was easier to deal with dictators as the allies, if it is okay with us. So it's a little bit complicated to say, but that's or indifferent, I would say, for our political world to see the right priorities. That priority of unity somehow disappeared from political thinking. Mm-hmm. Everybody was for unity government, but it meant that if they want to join our program, they're welcome to do it. So, that's the problem of all the world. Polarization in America and other countries is very big. But again, Israel as a test case for many other things. It was also a test case to what extent democracy can afford polarization. And we living in such an region and building the country from so many different groups who are coming back after 1,000 years. It's a unique experiment. Nobody So we are responsible for this experiment. So to show the world whether it works or doesn't work. And then, let's say at this stage, for these couple of years, we really failed. And now the fact that today we are in a much better situation than a year ago is, of course, a result of big efforts of all our people, big sacrifices and big efforts, but something very good and healthy in our nature, which does exist.
You mentioned earlier that a lot of times people will say to you that you being a Zionist and being a human rights activist are two things that are contradictory, they don't make any sense. In 2020, the Israel Supreme Court ruled that Israel was allowed to force feed prisoners who were on strike, or on a food strike, and you spoke out against it, saying that was, totally inappropriate, that when you were in the Soviet Union, you were force-fed, and it's cruel, and it's an inappropriate thing to do. I'm curious how, in general, you find a balance between calling out the human rights issues that you may see in Israel, whether they're common, uncommon, in whatever form they take, while at the same time still being so committed to Zionism, to the state of Israel, helping to grow the country. Do you find that to be a difficult position? As you said earlier about you're sometimes between the far right and the far left, I'm just curious how you navigate that.
Look, of course it's easier to go to one extreme or to see the world black and white, and I'm on the side of light, or black. It's much easier. But as a chess player, I can say it's always good that you are identified with one. But also it's very important that after this you can turn the board and to start thinking for the other side and to understand. Otherwise, you cannot really understand your own mistakes. So in this specific case which you gave, I didn't say that we should not feed them. I simply said the debate was whether it's torture or, to the contrary, luxury. And I said, you all speak theoretical. I went through 34 force feedings. It is a torture. I can describe you that it is a torture. Whether you should use it as torture or not, that's special law has to be done. Like, I was in the government when there was big debate about law on Shabak, what is possible or not possible to use during the situation of ticking bomb. You understand? And there were accusations against us, against me personally, how you, who believe in human rights, can even discuss things, what can be done. But with the time, the world understood that we are far ahead of all the world, because what it meant, that at the time of ticking bomb, people can do the most awful things. And we know it from Vietnam, we know it from from Hollywood films, wherever, that people not thinking about what is permitted, not, they will do everything. They will cut you in pieces because at this moment there is danger. We gave the laws like restricted that even in this moment, maximum what you can do, this, and this. Which today, of course, is minimum, which everybody agreed that what can be done against terrorists who at this moment, by getting from the information, you have to save so many lives. So so I didn't say, no, never use force feeding. I said, don't
Misunderstood.
don't
think
play
it's
with
easy.
with the truth. Yes, and there are some extreme situations that you decide that you force feed this, that they will suffer from this.
But be honest about what it is.
Yeah, be honest with yourself. So people didn't like, but they had to accept it because nobody in the country had this experience. So they were all speaking theoretical. No, we
So
see
you were
that,
speaking from your life
and I'm
experience.
speaking from my life. In fact, I'm glad that I didn't die during that long hunger strike, which I won in the end, 110 days. But I won only because all the free world was on my side. And I can't say that if they didn't feed me by force and I would die, it could be better for me or for the world. But yes, it was a torture through which I felt I have to go through. And so that's what I think. We have to not to play with the words, but to say, in this situation we are ready to do this and this too. And by this we are minimizing the torture in the world and not maximizing.
We spoke a lot about your experience in the Soviet Union. Obviously, now one of the biggest things in the current war that's lurking over everyone's head is the about 100 hostages who remain trapped in Gaza. How have you been thinking about that and about what needs to be done to bring them home and about what's been done over the last 460 or so days?
Well, first of all, I hope that while this interview will be in the air, the hostage will be released. I don't know how quickly you are working. But
it'll be on a Monday, so 1 week.
On Monday, well.
Today.
First of all, every day is as my wife was saying, that she lived the way that as if the next day I can come home. And when she was even discussing with the people that she'll appear there with such a lecture, such a meeting, and she was always saying, providing that my husband will not come.
Wow, she always
and
held
it was
on
for 12 years, you have to understand, yeah. But so it's really very important to live with this feeling that it can happen every day and to work for this. And it's very important that Hatufim will feel that the Jews of the world and Israel are fighting for them. Now, but it's true that we had two challenges at the same time: survival of these people and survival of the country. It was like awful thing which happened to them, but awful thing what happened to our resilience, to our opportunity to survive in the Middle East. And that's why I was always saying that, not like in previous exchanges that I was absolutely against, I voted against when I was
exchanges between convicted terrorists and hostages.
Yeah, well, there was Tenenbaum, I think his name was, who happened to be in Lebanon, and Hezbollah caught him, and then we released like 600 terrorists in exchange. And Ariel Sharon called me at night saying that it is very important for him that I'll vote tomorrow with him because I was in prison, I know how to support. And I said to him, just because I am in prison, and I knew that not for every price you are ready to be released.
Wow.
And I faced this situation when I had to decide that I will not accept their conditions because I believed it can allow struggle. And even when there was reached some agreement between Americans and them, I didn't accept them, and I spent another 3 years in prison, not knowing how many it will be. So I said, to the contrary, my experience of being in prison said that I cannot support the deal when We are releasing 600 terrorists and so on. And many of them who were released then later became our strongest enemies. I wasn't in the government when there was Shalit case, but I was absolutely against. So this thing is different because it is we who have to be blamed for the fact that hostages are there. It is huge failure of our army, of our intelligence, of our state, and like the contract which the state has with the citizens, it has to do everything to release them. Having said, that's why I don't think that consideration whether this terrorist will be released or that can be consideration in this case. But consideration is the survival of us as a state. That's why I said any price except the price of bringing back Hamas to power or deciding not to fight against Hamas, even if it means that it will go back, should be paid. So this is the price which cannot be paid, and as I understood, in the end, that is exactly the point debating whether the conditions of the release of hostages will permit to Hamas to survive and come back to power or not. And that should be our approach. I hope we are coming to a solution. Yeah.
I mean, I hope this isn't relevant by the time the interview is finished. Do you think peace between Israelis and Palestinians will happen within your lifetime?
I think secured Israel will happen in our time. To what extent it will be really full peace? I personally believe that full peace means that societies around us also have developed civil societies when their leaders think about the well-being of their people and not how to destroy us. And when I came with these ideas at the time of Oslo Agreement or against Oslo Agreement, I was told, as I said, that it's naive because it will take 30 years. 30 years after, we are much more far from this because we permitted to our enemies to educate and grow their people in absolute hatred to us and with the absolute obligation to destroy us. So now I suspect it will take more than 30 years. But I hope to live more than 30 years. I hope.
We'll celebrate together.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
What do you think should happen with Gaza and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict after the war?
Well, no doubt that Gaza will be rebuilt. What will
rebuilt
be
for the Palestinians or rebuilt for Israel?
No, I don't think it will be rebuilt for Israel, meaning that, no, peaceful Gaza, it's the best thing which can be for Israel. I was absolutely against destroying Gush Kativ. I was a big patriot of Gush Kativ. I don't think I was a minister, and even before I resigned, I think I was the only minister who was in the government, and at the same participated in all the anti-government demonstrations on behalf of Gush Kativ. I think it was practically a crime what we did then. I don't think it's on our agenda today to rebuild Gush Kativ. It should not be, because we have so many priorities. How we are building new type of Middle East, how we have to defeat our enemies. We have to build relations with Saudi Arabia and the others. We have definitely to destroy nuclear power of Tehran. We have to encourage different types of structures emerging in our region. All this at this moment of history, the attempt now to build Yishuv Yehudi b'toch Gaza makes it much more difficult. So I don't think it is now a priority. I do believe that the real peace is when we can have our Yishuvim in any place without being afraid, exactly as Arabs are not afraid when they're building another Yishuv in Galil. They're not thinking twice whether it is dangerous for them. The ideal situation is when we don't have to think twice building Yishuvim in Gaza. It's not a priority for this moment, I believe. Yeah.
Is Israel properly handling the Iranian threat?
Well, first of all, we are properly dealing with this. by far the first who understood that that is a threat to the world. To say, Bibi Netanyahu, in the first government that it was beginning of me as a politician, his beginning as prime minister in the end of 90s. Then, when I was going to Russia with my first visits, it was very symbolic. I'm coming back to Russia, which I left as a prisoner. Now I'm coming back as a minister. But he was asking me to deal with the question of leakage of Russian technologies to Iran, because he was the first who started dealing with the sanctions in Washington against Iran for this more than 20 years ago. And yes, it was all the time on the agenda how we destroy the nuclear capabilities and missile capabilities of Iran. We were right to be concerned. We were right to warn the world, to try to encourage the world to take sanctions. Whether we were right not to have this military operation before, I don't know, because I'm not a military expert. I know that each time when we were very close to do, first of all, the West was pressing us not to do, and also I understand the army was not ready that we're sure. I think, so in general, I think we were right. I think where we, together with all the free world, were wrong is to believe that our aim should be fighting with the regime and not changing with the regime. I don't mean changing by sending the army, but Iranian opposition is by far the biggest opposition which existed in any Muslim country in the world. In 2005, 6, 7, I was involved in dialogue with different parts of the Iranian opposition, and there was only one person in Israeli government who believed in it and who was also involved, and it was Uri Lubrani. Uri Lubrani, the last ambassador of Israel in Iran, the one who, after this, was working in the Ministry of Defense, and who kept his connections with the Iranian opposition and believed that that is the way to change things. And nobody else believed. Nobody here, nobody in America. And when Iranian revolution really started, as many dissidents predicted, and in 2007 I was one of the organizers of a big meeting of dissidents from all over the world, Václav Havel and myself organized in Prague. And there were many dissidents from the Middle East. Everybody was saying that number one target is Iran. And when it really happened in 2009, the free world betrayed this revolution. President Obama said that engagement with the regime is more important than changing with the regime, and which was awful. So I think we were wrong that we underestimated the potential for internal change in Iran. But that was the mistake which all the free world did. And I think now there is understanding of it much bigger. And so now I hope, and our prime minister is appealing directly to the people of Iran over the head of the dictators, I think he's doing a very right thing. I hope that we are doing it on different levels, I hope. I hope that America is doing it on different levels. Because in the end, I believe that, well, nuclear capabilities, we have to destroy them actively, military, and now I think we have more confidence in our capability to do it than before. But the fate of regime has to be decided by the people inside Iran. After all, Iran is the only country where there are trade unions who are against the regime, where students' organizations who are against the regime, women's organizations who are against the regime, and simply they have to be given opportunity to act.
We have two last questions, if that's okay, and we'll be good with time. Where do you identify on Israel's political and religious spectrum, and do you have friends on the other side?
I have friends on all the sides. And as I said, I identify myself as in the middle. But historically, I think I'm still the member of the Central Committee of Likud, because everybody who was minister from Likud party, he is like for his life the member of the Senate committee. Though I think for 15 years I was not there, but
Can never get out of it.
but it's more and more difficult to me with the time to identify myself with any specific party, because the moment I think about this party, I will think about things that I disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do hope that before the next election there emerge at least two new parties, one to the right from Likud, one to the left from Likud. They all will be initiated by people from one tank, meaning people who are coming from the battles and who know the importance of being in one tank. And then they will become the base of this coalition count where Likud can be inside. But yeah, we really need, I say it to practically all of our milovnikim, we really need new generation of politicians. Yeah.
And so our last question,
Yeah.
do you have more hope or fear for Israel and the Jewish people?
Well, I always have hope, and I spent my life in learning and then teaching how to overcome fear. My book of memories is called Fear No Evil. So it's legitimate to be afraid, especially when they try to sentence you to death, and that's what they try to do to me. That's what our enemies try to do to Israel. So it's unnatural to have no fears. But then you have to know how to cope with the fear, and I think we know how to cope with the fear, and hope should never leave us. And we are the people who proved more than anybody else that if you are strong in your hope, it becomes truth.
Amazing. Natan Sharansky, thank you so much for answering our 18 questions.